They told their friends and family that they were seeing spirits in their house and that it was haunted. Then they were seen on their home security footage packing up their belongings into their car in a trance-like state. In between packing, they would stop and stare off into the distance for minutes at a time, completely still and silent. After this, the family vanished into thin air. This is the mysterious case of the Jamison family disappearance and eventual death. This footage of them alone gives me chills because of how creepy and unexplained it is. So let's talk about what happened to them. This is the Jamison family, which consisted of 44-year-old Bobby, 40-year-old Sherilyn, who was the mom, and this was their 6-year-old daughter, Madison. On the outside looking in, they seemed like a happy, normal family living in Eufaula, Oklahoma. But in the fall of 2009, this would all change. For a little bit of a backstory, Bobby was involved in a really bad car accident in the early 2000s, which messed up his back really badly. He was pretty much always in severe pain, unless he was taking pain medicine prescribed by his doctor. Leading up to 2009, both he and Sherilyn weren't working, partly because of Bobby's back problems, but also because Sherilyn was a stay-at-home mom caring for Madison. Life wasn't super easy for them, as it was reported that they had previously struggled with drug abuse. But in the years prior, they were sober, and although Sherilyn generally seemed okay from the outside, she also struggled with bipolar disorder, which can be really hard to navigate. Anyways, since the family wasn't working, they were pretty much just living off of Bobby's car crash settlement and disability. Every now and then, Sherilyn and Bobby would get into a fight, which resulted in Sherilyn kicking him out of the house. When this happened, Bobby would usually sleep outside in his truck, which is where he stored some extra cash in case of emergencies. By all accounts, they weren't the perfect family, and they had their troubles just like everyone else. Eventually, they pulled Madison out of school altogether, and they started telling their friends, family, and their local pastor some disturbing things. They said their house was haunted and that they were seeing spirits, and this disturbed Bobby so much that he asked his pastor if there were special bullets that he could buy to shoot said spirits. On top of this unique and creepy experience, Bobby was also fighting with his dad, Bob. But this wasn't your typical service-level fight. Bob had reportedly threatened to kill Bobby's entire family on multiple occasions, and at one point, he even hit Bobby with his car. Side note, this was unrelated to the first accident Bobby got into, which gave him the back problems. Anyway, Bobby was so scared that his dad was going to kill him and his family that he actually filed for a protection order against him. In the petition, Bobby wrote, quote, "My entire family is scared for their lives. I am in fear at all times." End quote. So because of this, I think Bobby and Sherilyn felt like they needed a fresh start. So they started talking about buying a 40-acre plot of land near Red Oak, Oklahoma. They wanted to put a storage container on the land and then live in it. And on October 7th, 2009, they actually drove up to a potential piece of land near the Sandboy Mountains. There, they talked to the landowner, and everything seemed fine. But the next day, the entire family would vanish, and the circumstances surrounding their disappearance are incredibly bizarre. So the very last time the Jamison family was ever seen alive was on October 8th, 2009. They were seen on their home security footage going back and forth between their house and their truck, packing up some of their belongings. But this footage is really creepy for a handful of reasons. For one, the family is almost in a trance-like state. For over an hour, they would take things from their house and then put it into their truck, then just stop and stand there, silent and motionless. They would stand there not speaking for several minutes, just staring off into the distance, and then they would snap out of it and continue packing. At one point, the footage shows Sherilyn putting a brown briefcase into the truck. After this, the entire family, even their pet dog Macy, gets into the truck and drives off, never to be seen alive again. After a while of not hearing from the family, their friends reported them missing. It wasn't until 8 days later, though, that they found something. About 30 miles away near Red Oak, which is where the Jamison family wanted to buy property, police found their pickup truck, and it was abandoned. But what's super creepy is that all of the doors were locked, and there really wasn't any sign that something was wrong. The only thing that initially stood out was the way it was parked. Like, it just didn't seem natural to authorities. Inside the car, though, were all of the Jamisons' personal belongings. So their IDs, their wallets, their phones, a GPS system, and $32,000 in cash. That was really weird, but what was even more alarming was that the family dog, Macy, was also still in the truck. And at this point, she was alive, but severely malnourished. Like, I'm talking minutes away from probably dying. Missing from the scene, though, was Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison. and that brown suitcase Sherilyn was seen putting into the truck, along with her handgun. Circling back to the $32,000 in cash though, this threw investigators for a loop because that is a lot of money to have in a truck just laying around. But it was also weird because neither Bobby or Sherilyn worked. They were on a fixed income with disability. So for them to all of a sudden have $32,000 in cash like that, it was just odd. One other thing was found in the truck that raised suspicions, and it was an 11-page letter handwritten by Sherilyn that detailed how much she resented Bobby. And as police were combing through their phones, they found this picture on Bobby's. It's of their daughter Madison, and it was taken the day the family went missing, possibly near where the truck was found abandoned. This picture went viral on social media because Madison looks scared and like something is really wrong. Her hair is a bit messy, her clothes look a bit too small, and something just feels really off and unsettling with the picture. Then add in the fact that it was taken right before all three of them disappeared. So needless to say, after the truck was found, a massive search for the family began, which involved tracking dogs, volunteers, and authorities. They combed the woods where the truck was found for so long, but they found nothing. It was like the family just vanished into thin air, and eventually the search was called off. Police reviewed the security footage taken from the family's home and noted how odd it was, and they just kept coming back to that brown briefcase that Sherilyn was seen putting into the truck. It was missing from the scene, which it shouldn't have been if everything else was there, and police suspect that it was possibly filled with cash. They single-handedly feel like this suitcase is probably the most important missing clue, and if they could find it, that would potentially solve this case. So then that leads to the question, where is it? What's in it? Did someone take it? And if so, who? Eventually, with no leads to go off of, this case would soon fall cold. But then, over 4 years after the family vanished, a horrifying discovery would be made. In November 2013, 2 hunters were out scouting a remote area near Red Oak when they stumbled across the skeletal remains of 2 adults and 1 child. The remains were laying side by side and face down, which is eerie. When police were called, they all collectively thought that it could be the Jamison family, but this wouldn't be confirmed for another year. Because of the state of the remains and how decomposed they were, the medical examiner on the case had to use anthropological and forensic pathological testing to confirm the identities, which obviously took some time. But finally, 1 year later, the results came back. The remains did in fact belong to Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison Jamison. Unfortunately, due to the state of their remains and due to animal activity, none of their bodies were completely intact. Like, some of their body parts were missing, and because of that, their cause of death could not be determined. But what was collected showed no signs of trauma or foul play, which is so weird. And because of that, their cause of death could not be confirmed. But what was collected showed no signs of trauma or foul play, which is so weird. So to this day, their deaths are labeled as undetermined. The worst part is that the remains were found literally less than 3 miles away from where their truck was found abandoned all those years ago. I genuinely don't know how that's even possible, given over 300 people were out searching in that specific area for them right after they disappeared and found nothing. And although we don't know what exactly happened to the family, there are a few theories. Well, before their remains were found, police suspected that they faked their own deaths, but that's obviously not the case. One theory is that the Jamison family was killed by Bobby's dad. I mean, he had threatened to kill them in the past, but at the time of their disappearance, his dad was severely ill and in and out of hospitals and nursing homes, so police don't think he was involved, and he died just 2 months after their disappearance. Another theory, somewhat believed by police, was that Bobby and Sherilyn were drug dealers. There's no real proof of this, but because of their drug use in the past, people think it could be possible. They were reportedly sober though, and had been for some time. But some people point out how thin they were in the last footage of them packing up their belongings, and their strange behavior before they disappeared. Like how they were saying they were seeing ghosts and all of that. It is important to note that police fully searched their home and found no evidence of drug use though. Some people think that could be an explanation for how much money they had in their truck. How else would they have $32,000 in cash? Maybe this was a drug deal gone wrong type of situation. On the other hand, some people think that if the family was using hard drugs that paired with mental illness, maybe this caused some sort of psychotic break. That maybe in that last footage of them, they were experiencing hallucinations or paranoia from the drugs, and either they went out and got lost in the wilderness and succumbed to the elements, or maybe they were killed for a drug debt. That could explain why they were all found side by side and face down. That seems like an execution to me. Another theory is that this was a murder murder-suicide, but it's just weird that their bodies showed no sign of trauma. The only thing that did come up on the autopsy report was a really small hole in the back of Bobby's skull, which I guess could have come from a bullet, but investigators say it was so small that it could have been caused by a wild animal. If this was a murder-suicide, why take the $32,000 and their family dog, which reportedly meant everything to the family? And I guess Madison was super attached to their dog, so it doesn't make sense why they would do this if they planned on ending their own lives. If they accidentally wandered off and got lost and died that way, why would all three of them be found together and face down? I don't think they would all die at the same time if they just got lost, so this is weird to me. It also doesn't make sense that they would willingly hike 3 miles into the woods when Bobby had known back problems and was always in pain. That doesn't seem like something he would do voluntarily. Some suspect that whoever the family met up with that day to possibly buy land from killed them, but there's never been any evidence of this. There have been rumors in the past that locals in Red Oak know what happened to the Jamison family and who did it, that the family saw something they shouldn't have in the woods. And if that's true, the only thing I could think is that maybe they stumbled across a grow operation or something of that nature. Before the entire family, including a 6-year-old little girl, to be killed over this, though, I don't know if that's likely. Sadly, this case is still unsolved, and to this day, no one knows what really happened to them. I'm not sure if it will ever be solved unless someone comes forward and had there been another party involved. Police think that they did not disappear willingly and that someone else could have been involved. Just based on how the truck was parked and the money and the dog left behind, investigators believe that they were forced to stop driving by someone in the area. And then once they got out, they were forced to walk into the woods to their eventual deaths. For what reason? They don't know, but it's left many wondering who or what they were running from. And by all accounts, it seems like they didn't intend to be gone for long. I always come back to this picture of Madison. It's so eerie to me knowing what's about to happen to her. But the biggest question I have is who took this picture? I mean, it was found on Bobby's phone, so maybe he took it. And I know that makes full sense. But on the other hand, it could have been taken by another person, maybe even their killer. It's just disturbing. What's so crazy about this case is that there are a ton of leads, which is usually good. But in this case, every single lead points to a different direction, and absolutely none of them add up or make any sense. But it's now been 17 years, yet whatever really happened to the Jamison family in those woods remains a mystery.